Oxford and Cambridge. Dr. Chris, you're very welcome to our studios today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Let's look at what's been happening in education throughout the week, including those who got their admissions into Year 8 and the parents' reactions for those who did not get their choices. But first of all, on the news today, it was special needs statement is going to be scrapped and is going to be replaced with education and healthcare plans. Now, how is the education and healthcare plans? How are they different from the SEN statements?
We hope it's going to be simplified. That means we have one person that is in charge of a child that has been assessed to not to be making progress as other boys and girls of their age, because that's the whole essence of having special needs assessment, of trying to find out which student absorbs faster than the other. Right now, we have about 4 or 5 different professionals involved. 1, 2, you have all sorts of assessments on the child. And then 3, it now becomes a permanent label on the child. So the child says, I'm SCN, therefore I won't do this. Instead of saying, right now, I may not be moving at the same pace as my colleagues or my friends, but I'm working on it so that I can catch up with them. So it's a remedial tool, not a permanent label where a child says, I'm going to wear that throughout my entire educational career.
A remedial tool, not a permanent label. And
no,
that's
it's
what's
not
important.
A permanent label, because almost parents are now misfed into thinking that because your son belongs to the special educational needs group, he is not expected to perform up to the threshold for that age group. So it now becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy to say I'm bad or I'm poor or I'm weak in that subject. Therefore, it's okay for me to be weak in that subject. When you should really find out that because I'm weak in this subject, I'm going to work hard so that next year I will catch up with my friends, I'll catch up with my mates, or even overtake my mates. That has never happened. It's not generated the progression that was originally designed for all SEN students.
And so the education and healthcare plans are actually going to remove that label from children.
That's what
it
promises.
Make them understand that it's actually a remedial phase they're going through, just to catch up with their colleagues.
Yes.
What are the parents' reactions on these?
Some parents will be very excited because a lot of parents fight. Once they've been assessed and they've been statemented, it's almost an indelible ink. Some parents come and say, oh, I think my boy has caught up, or I think my little girl has caught up. Why can't we review the situation and then remove the child from the SEN register? It becomes a very, very tough thing for you to take that child off the SEN register. So if you simplify it, it means that you can be pulled out of it and all hope is not lost. So parents that were appealing or parents that were really protesting against their children being labeled very early and that label being literally indelible will now at least heave a sign of relief and say, you mean we'll review it gradually and review it regularly and be able to say this is back to mainstream. And so we can work with the child at the pace that every other child is moving.
Let's go to the hottest topic that has been in the news last week and this week, and congratulations to all those who got their choice place into Year 8. Now let's look at those who didn't get it. And parents have been wondering, what should they do? What other options are there?
First of all, know that there are options. Know that once you've received the letter of offer from the school you did not even include on your form, you can now pick out every single school that you included on your form and write them directly and say, I applied to come to your school. I still feel my son or my daughter will be best served by coming to your school. Can you send me the appeal procedure? Because I want to appeal against the decision for your school not to take my son or daughter. So you contact them directly. 2, you also need to write to the local authority to say that the offer that they've made you, thank you for the offer, but it was not one of my 6 options at all, or it was not my first choice. I would like to appeal. If there are any literature that is available, let us know. And go again to their website. The third thing is to go and independently verify whatever information you get from the local authority or from the school on their website. Because on their website, they are supposed to have the admissions procedure, and you must make sure that they follow the admissions procedure in order to determine whether or not your son or daughter was suitable for that school. Once your relocation is reviewed, you'll be shocked to find out that there are humans that enter the data onto the computer. Computers make errors as well. So you find out that there are about 6-7 different points of possible errors to be made in the allocation of schools. So you will be very, very surprised that there could be an error and you reverse it. At least 25% of the appeals last year were successful.
25% of the appeals last year were successful.
So don't take a school that you have not applied for. Don't accept anything that you've been given that you know is not appropriate for your child's talent or your child's interest or the way it's going to develop over the next years. Because these are the most formative years in the life of any child. Between the ages of 11 and 16 is very, very formative, and you cannot afford to compromise by going for second best. You have to go for what you know, because you're the longest serving teacher of your son, remember? You've had your son or your daughter since birth up till now, until 10. So you can determine the best possible environment that will nurture that talent and make that talent to blossom. That's the reason why you mustn't take it lightly.
Now, let's look at the 75% that's happened not to be successful. For example, a parent's appeals and it actually is turned down. What other options do they have? Tell
them you want to be on the waiting list. Tell them no matter what happens, you want that your son or your daughter to be on the waiting list. Because the more you emphasize the fact, the suitability of a school for your son or your daughter, the more the school takes notice of you. They don't see you as a troublemaker. They see you as a very passionate, conviction-driven person that wants the best for their son or daughter. So no one's going to look down on you, or no one's going to look at you suspiciously. So that's the first thing. Two, you can still appeal to the adjudicator and say you want the adjudicator to review the processes involved and also review your son's progress. If it's a musical school, you must identify whether it's one subspecialty or the other. If it's a specialism school, very fine. So if your son is good at sports and is a sports specialist college, what do? You get every single documentation, every single award, every single letter he received to go and play rugby for his school or tennis or did athletics. You bring that together and say, this is why we think this son should have been given a place in this school.
And that was just what I was about to ask. You know, how do you put a convincing appeal through during the appealing process?
You have to demonstrate that with documentation. You have to dig up every single award or commendation at school level, at county level, when you involve the charities or voluntary organizations. So, for instance, if your son plays in the church choir or plays in the junior band, that's very strong evidence that he's musical. So if the school turning him down is a musical college, you now say, look, this is the sort of talent you need in the school. I'm even doing you a favor by reminding you of what is your strength. So if the more musicians you have in your school, the more your musical status is going to be strengthened and more competitions you're going to win. So if it's linguistic, bring out the linguistic component that you've seen in your child, or the talents, flashes of talent of language learning that you've seen in your child, and document it. Don't just say it. Bring the evidence, bring the photocopies, and make sure you attach it to the form and send it in. And we still got all the steps, 7 different steps you need to take to be able to get your appeal to be successful. Because most appeals are not successful on the basis of the merit, is on the basis of technicality. So if your son is sporting, for instance, and you don't submit the documentation, they'll turn your son down. So it's best you sit down and get proper advice and follow the procedure, because a lot more people that are less qualified than you will get a place. Why? Because they had a better preparation than you that were really on the basis of merit ought to go in.
Quite interesting now for parents who are wondering, what next do I need to do? My child didn't get his first choice of school. You can actually send us an email to brunch@loveworldtv.co.uk or go to our blogging website, which is ucos.com/brunchnews, and leave an information there. Let's go over to universities and the tuition fees of £9,000. The government has come to say every university would have to spend £900 of the £9,000 on subsidies and outreach projects, in other words, to access poorer students into the school. Now, is this going to help at all?
It's too late, and it's very too little too late. You don't stimulate poor children from poor background when they are already in year 11 or year 12. Most mistakes are made in year 9. So I would want it to feed further down. If there's going to be any outreach, it should be the government that should come out with a plain level field for every single year 7 and year 8, so that when it comes to year 9, they choose the appropriate subject. Remember, most students that are in inner city schools or those from poor background are poor financially, they are not poor intellectually. Is the harnessing of that talent that we are failing to do, and that's why again it's very, very dubious for the university to be placed on alert, or the university to be given the heavy burden of being able to recruit students from inner cities. They will be able to refine one or two things in year 11, in year 12, and year 13, but the mistakes need to be corrected in year 9, when subjects are determined by the students, so that you choose the appropriate subject that will qualify you or assist you in your desired profession or your desired degree that you want to read. So it's one little thing, very little, but I still feel that the government should do a lot more to bring the idea, the concept of going to university to every single secondary school student. As soon as you start high school, you should have that as your goal. You should have that as an aspiration. You should have that as your dream. And you should keep saying, when I go to university, I will do this. When I go to university, not if I go to university. Or some people don't even have it in their own consciousness. They just believe they went to year 7 because they finished year 6. And because they finish a time or 1 year at a time. You don't do that. You've got to be very strategic. You've got to say, where are we going to end? You begin with the end in mind and say, because I'm intending to possibly be a lawyer, I want to be very sure that I've got Latin in my subject that I'm picking. Or because I want to be an engineer, I want to be absolutely sure that I'm going to do separate sciences, because that will place me at an advantage when it comes to applying to university. Because I want to be a physicist, I need to know what subjects are going to build up and will enhance my knowledge acquisition in physics. Year 12, I mean, saying you want to have an outreach for year 12 that has already chosen their A-level subjects. Because remember, by the time you're in year 12, you've already narrowed your number of subjects to 3 or 4, depending on what school you're going to. Now, if, for instance, you now find out that you're doing something wrong, if you're going to change in year 12, that means you're going to lose a year. And most students don't want to go out of sync at that stage. So that's the reason why I'm saying it's a little bit, just a little bit of little drop in the ocean. And I know that a lot of the Russell Group universities and the top universities are only doing very, very little now. But if they're going to charge £9,000, if that 900 is really plugged into doing real combined tours, combined scholarships that you give to them, students in the summer. During the summer, most students are playing or involved in one thing or the other. Have real established summer school that invites a group of students on the basis of free meal to come and spend 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and enjoy what university life is all about. Enjoy the curiosity that you're allowed to express, that independence that the university gives you. Let them see it, and they will see learning from a totally different perspective, and their eyes will open up.
Quite interesting. Let's go over to the year 13s that have actually gotten admissions, places into universities. Congratulations if you got your choice into the choice of your university. Now, let's look at the inner city pupils. A lot of them lost out on university places. Now, why?
It is essentially due to the fact that the decisions they make is not consistent with the subject they are studying. So it's not ability. So you can get somebody getting 5 A's, but the first A is in biology, the second A is in chemistry, the third A is in maths, and then the fourth A is, for instance, in geography. And then he wants to read actuarial science. So if for any reason he drops or he or she drops in maths, you're in trouble. Because remember, it directly or indirectly into what you want to study. So it's those poor choices that are made earlier on that then comes back to come and haunt inner city students.
Does that mean the inner city students do not receive proper guidance in year 9?
That's the trouble. They don't receive any guidance that tells them specifically that your options are being limited if you avoid certain subjects. The guidance they get is that do the subjects that you love, do the subjects that you enjoy, without saying do the subject that will lead to what you are going to love doing in the long term. So if you love law and you participated in debates and you've enjoyed your debate, and if now say, oh no, I'm not keen on Latin, and you then drop Latin or any of the modern foreign languages that may feed into the study of law, you've severely disadvantaged yourself. So it's the quality of supervision, the quality of guidance, the non-availability of role models. So you don't have anybody in your family that has spread law and has come back to tell you that I struggled with this at uni because I was not built up originally to study the subject. For instance, I hated maths, but I just managed to pass maths, and because of that, but I still love engineering. It doesn't work that way. If you're going to spell the word engineer at university, you must be absolutely sure about the logic that maths confers on you. You must be able to work with numbers and play with numbers. You must be able to be familiar with problem solving, which is what maths is all about. So if you've taken care of this, then later on you're not going to struggle. But you cannot just afford to do the barest possible in maths and expect to be a top-notch engineer.
This is quite interesting. Let's look at parents who have their children in inner city schools and are wondering, what are we going to do? How can they help their wards at that level?
Get your ward on a bike, or yourself on a bike, or get going to the nearest university that where you live. Get a copy of their prospectus. Look at the admissions requirement. It's written in English. It's written in simple English. Write to another university. Ask for a copy of their prospectus. Open. By the time you've gone through 2 or 3 different universities, and they're all saying the same thing, that should trigger some thinking in you. And so I think this subject is needed for this profession. Because most prospectuses will tell you, this is the entry requirement, this is what you need to do, this is what you need to do. When you've done this, then this, then you can get into this. But if you are deprived of that information and then leave it until when you are in year 11, it becomes very difficult for you to make any significant change. You may be able to maneuver a little bit, but to make any significant change when you've already hated the subject, or when you did the subject just because you had to do the subject, then the enthusiasm is not going to be there, and it's going to be too late for you to readjust and pick up what you need to do or the subject you need to do. So start early, order for copies of prospectus, go online at ucas.com, click on it and click on the subject, see all the universities that are offering that subject and see what their requirements are. So you have the option of either, if you're offline, get a copy of prospectus. If you're online, go online to ucas.com. You can go to your local library. Most libraries will have university prospectus. Have a look at them and then have a chat with your son or your daughter on what prospects.
Very interesting here now. From inner city schools to special needs, this has been some of the hottest topics discussed today. Now, if you need more information, especially parents who have children in inner city schools, you can go to our blogging website. Information is on the screen, which is ucas.com/brunchnews, and leave some information. We'll get back to you. Dr. Chris, it's wonderful to have you in our programs. We look forward to having you again.
Thank you. Pleasure.
Viewers, remember it is Brunch Education Talk. Enjoy the rest of our programs.